John Michael Osbourne was born into a working-class family in Birmingham, England on December 1948. The fourth of 6 children, he acquired the nickname Ozzy while in elementary school, where he struggled with his dyslexia. These and other challenges prompted Osbourne to leave school at age 16, at which point he worked a series of menial jobs including a stint in a slaughterhouse. He soon moved on to more illicit activities by committing a series of petty crimes culminating with a brief prison sentence for burglary. Throughout this turbulent period in his life, however, Osbourne nurtured a deep love for music, and after his release from prison he began exploring his potential as a vocalist. In 1968 he teamed up with bass player Terence Geezer Butler, guitarist Tony Iommi and drummer Bill Ward to form the rock band Polka Tulk Blues, which they soon renamed Earth. While Earth earned some local notoriety, it wasn't until the group began experimenting with the hard-driving, amplified sound that would later characterize the heavy metal genre that they caught the attention of record producers. Since the band's moniker was already in use by another group, they adopted the name Black Sabbath, a reference to the classic Boris Karloff film. Released by Vertigo Records in 1970, Black Sabbath's self-titled debut album was largely panned by critics but sold well in England and abroad. With standout tracks like the title song The Wizard and Evil Woman, Black Sabbath reached the top 10 in the United Kingdom and number 23 on the American album charts. The group's sophomore effort Paranoid in 1971 included the seminal metal anthems War Pigs, Iron Man, Fairies Wear Boots and Paranoid, and took Black Sabbath to new heights, topping the charts in the UK and reaching number 12 in the United States. The band's use of religious symbolism and mythic themes lent a gothic cast to their public personae. It also earned them constant criticism from right-wing groups, negative publicity that simply fueled the band's popularity with its fan base, mostly young males. As was the case with their first 2 albums, their subsequent efforts Master of Reality in 1971, Volume 4 in 1972 and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath in 1973 all found chart success, eventually achieving platinum status in the United States on the strength of such metal classics as Sweet Leaf, After Forever, Snowblind and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. With the release of 1975's Sabotage, the band's fortunes took a turn for the worse. Despite the strength of songs such as Symptom of the Universe and Am I Going Insane, the album failed to achieve the same status as its predecessors. Punctuating this shift, they were also forced to cut their subsequent tour short when Osbourne was injured in a motorcycle accident. The band's steady intake of drugs and alcohol, mostly by Osbourne, also added to the strain, along with the loss of fans to the burgeoning punk rock movement. Following the releases of Technical Ecstasy in 1976 and Never Say Die in 1978, Osbourne and his bandmates parted ways. Though Black Sabbath would carry on with various frontmen in the decades to come, including Ronnie James Dio, Dave Donato, Ian Gilliam, Glenn Hughes and Tony Martin, the group would never reach the same heights achieved during the Osbourne era, when they wrote and recorded some of heavy metal's most memorable songs. Unlike some artists, who fade into obscurity after leaving the groups that made them famous, Osbourne in 1980 delivered a solo debut, Blizzard of Oz, that was a resounding commercial success. Featuring the singles Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley, the album reached the top 10 in the United Kingdom and number 21 in the United States, where it would eventually notch multi-platinum status. His 1981 follow-up Diary of a Madman performed equally well. The ensuing tour was laden with misfortune, including a plane crash that killed guitar player Randy Rhoads and 2 other members of their entourage. Throughout the 1980s, Osbourne continued to cultivate the image of the troubled loner and angry rebel, with his antisocial theatrics contributing to his public notoriety. Among his antics, he showered his audiences with raw meat and bit the head off a live bat on stage. Not everyone found his persona and dark music so appealing, and he was frequently singled out by religious conservatives who hoped to demonstrate the negative impacts of rock music on society. Despite these and other challenges, including a 1986 stint in rehab, Osbourne continued to achieve commercial success with the albums Bark at the Moon in 1983, The Ultimate Sin in 1986 and No Rest for the Wicked in 1988, all going multi-platinum in the US. He ushered in the 1990s with his sixth solo offering No More Tears in 1991, which reached the top 10 in the US and featured the hit single of the same name. In short, in 2005 Osbourne reunited with Black Sabbath for a tour, and the following year the heavy metal legends were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. At the induction ceremony, Metallica, one of the countless groups for whom Black Sabbath was a primary influence, performed Iron Man in honor of the band. Despite the years of abuse to his body, Osbourne displayed impressive staying power by continuing to tour as part of Ozzfest. He returned to the studio to record Black Rain in 2007, which topped out at number 3 on the US charts, and followed with the equally well-received Scream in 2010. In 2012 Osbourne reunited with his Sabbath bandmates to perform a series of concerts and record a new studio album 13, which earned its release the following year. In 2015 the band announced plans for one final tour, fittingly dubbed The End. The following year they also released an album of that name, comprised of unreleased tracks from 13 and several live performances. The tour wrapped up in the band members' hometown of Birmingham in February 2017. 1 year later Osbourne announced the dates for the North American leg of No More Tours 2, the final tour of his career. Although he noted that he wanted to spend more time with his family, the legendary headbanger insisted that he wasn't retiring as a musician and would continue playing smaller gigs and remaining involved with Ozzfest.